Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going over this optic that you see right here and that you saw throughout the intro. It is the TA02 model of the Trijicon ACOG. So it is a battery-powered ACOG. It forgoes the traditional tritium and fiber optic and actually allows the user to set the illumination. So that's kind of a big deal. These haven't been out for that long, and when they came out, a lot of people were really excited about them because one of the principal complaints about some ACOGs is that the lighting conditions and the illumination setting of the reticle do not always match. So one of the classic examples is if you're like in a urban structure or in a house or something like that where it's relatively low light shooting out into a brightly lit field or something like that. The illumination that the fiber optic would gather would not be enough to power the reticle and make it contrast with the terrain. So that's one, and of course the opposite would be the same as well. If you're out in a bright field shooting into like a window or something like that, same thing. It would be too bright and wouldn't be low enough to actually see what's in the window. So those were one of the big complaints about traditional ACOGs. This one here fixes it because it allows the user to set the actual illumination of the reticle. So that's kind of a big deal. It's something a lot of people were really excited about when these were released. So I've had this one in for a few months now. I've been shooting it on a variety of different rifles, as you guys have probably noticed. And what we're going to do is let the dogs take a look at it first, make sure it gets their seal of approval, and then come back in, go over the details of it, and let you know what we think of it at the end overall. All ACOG models come in this nice hard plastic box. It'll have your actual model number and reticle on the side, and then when you open it up, it'll have some nice padding in there, so that way nothing sort of shifts around during shipping. It has the foam to protect it. It has a lens pen for cleaning your optic, cleaning the lens, manual. And the manuals on the ACOGs are actually pretty good in terms of how to use it overall. Sticker, warranty card, and some other swag in there. So we'll set that aside and get into the optic. There's a few differences with it being battery powered that aren't there on other ACOGs. First and foremost, of course, is the control knob here on the left. This is your actual illumination settings. So what we have here is completely off, and then one, that is a night vision compatible setting. In most daylight conditions, you're going to want to be somewhere between 3 and 5. If you leave it on 4, the actual battery life will be 12,000 hours, which is approximately a year and a half. So if you just change your battery out on, say, Christmas or your birthday or New Year's Eve, whatever the case may be, you'll always be able to leave it on and not have to worry about it. Now, one thing I do like about the adjustments is that there's an offsetting between each. So my personal preference, if I was going to use this optic here, I would leave it between 3 and 4, and really either way you turn it, with one click, you'll be on with a usable illuminated reticle. Another difference, of course, is the battery compartment here on the right side of the optic. Out front, we do have the cap. It does take a AA battery, and Trijicon does recommend you use the lithium ones. So it will run off a standard one, but they recommend the lithium ones for, optimal functioning, if you will. So the cap there is O-ring sealed, and the threads do have lubricant on there, just like a nice high quality flashlight. If you wanted to take this rifle optic here diving, you certainly could do so. I would imagine most folks aren't going to actually submerge it, but if you wanted to, you could, and it would be fine because everything is sealed up there. Of course, for civilians, the more practical application is using it hunting or something like that, or law enforcement out in the field. You won't have to worry about it fogging up or anything like that because it is fully purged and all sealed up everywhere it could be. Battery compartment, lenses, as well as the elevation and windage adjustments. Speaking of those adjustments, they are half MOA adjustments, so half an inch at 100 yards with each click, both for windage and elevation. You can see there they are tactile in terms of having a nice distinct click and audible as well. If I quiet down, you'll probably be able to hear it. And all the newer ACOGs have the toolless adjustment system. Some of the older ones had a little screwdriver adjustment. The new ones will all have this current system here. Another difference with the LED model versus the standard TA31 here, this is the one with the ATSS reticle in there, but the difference between the two is the body. So we have here on the rear this little mount for mounting an RMR, and that on the LED version is actually located up front. So your RMR would be a little bit further forward. I'm not sure that would really practically matter in any sort of way, but just something to note there in terms of the design of the body. From the factory, the Optic is going to come with this TA51 mount here. It's a good mount. It's proven this is what most military units are actually using out there. It just screws down onto your 1913 style rail and secures in place like that. Now, if you do use one of these, I do recommend that you put a little bit of Loctite on there, because these screws can come out under hard use. I know a lot of military guys are constantly just torquing them down out of habit, but overall the mount's not bad. It is a little bit on the heavy side. But one thing with the 4-power ACOGs that a lot of folks dislike, sort of one of the cons of them, if you will, is the eye relief. So the eye relief on these optics is 1.5 inches, so you have to get relatively close to it. Definitely do the old standard nose to charging handle type of position with your head when you're actually firing the rifle. Now, one that is the downside, I should say. The upside of that is that the 4-power ACOGs have a 7-degree field of view, which will result in 36.8 feet at 100 yards. So if you're looking through it, you're going to feel like you can just see everything with these 4-power ACOGs, because it's just so nice and wide. The magnification, of course, 4-power is a good bit, and it's just so clear with that HD glass in there that Trijicon uses. So when you're looking through it, a lot of folks will say you get lost in the field of view. I've never actually found that to be the case, but people will say it. You'll hear that online in some places. I find if you keep your eyes, both eyes open, you'll never have that problem. But if you kind of look through it with one eye, I could see sort of where that would be. But where I was going with that before getting off on that little diatribe there was one of the downsides of it is that eye relief. It's relatively limited, and some folks want to move their optic a little bit further back, particularly if you're shooting it with a fixed stock or some of the non-conventional type of rifles out there, like the Scar, for instance, that you guys have seen throughout this review. This mount here is by GDI, and this is their B model. What it's designed to do is to actually bring the optic a little bit further back than it typically would be. So this is their, I believe, E model. This is their standard mount, which is going to be the same as sort of the TA51 in terms of positioning. And you can notice there, if I actually get my hands out of the way and you guys can see, if you look, that's basically where they would be. And you're getting essentially another ½ inch of clearance there in terms of eye release and moving it towards the rear. So that's one thing a lot of people like. There's other systems for that, but that's the one we just want to mention because we've been using it throughout the review, and I'm sure some folks would ask what it was. If not, we'll put a link down below for the mount for anybody looking for it. But they're good mounts. GDI makes mounts for militaries all around the world, and very good quality overall, so no issues with it. If you do have a problem with that eye relief, something you might want to check out. Of course, if you're just using, your standard collapsible stock M4 or something like that, you should be okay. The only time using the 4-power ACOG I've ever found it to be an issue is when shooting from non-traditional shooting positions. So if you're shooting from a barricade downhill or something like that, you may have a hard time getting up on the optic, or there's other sort of like shooting from your back type positions where it could be somewhat of an issue. So if that's you and that's something you're concerned with, just something to check out. The TA02 is one of the newer offerings in the ACOG lineup now. I think they released them in 2012, and at the time it just had the NSN reticle in there. And basically what that is a crosshair reticle that was in the original ACOGs that came out in the 80s. So it's a good reticle, it still works, but a lot of people wanted to have more options out there. So in 2014, Trijicon released all of their TA31 reticles into the TA02. So there's a wide variety out there. The crosshair that we mentioned, there's the circle with the donut, and then there's the chevron and some others. Now I went with the chevron because that's just what I'm used to and what I prefer personally. I went with the green one, but it's available in green and red. Now just a quick note on that, a lot of folks like red because again it's what they're used to, it's what red dots are. It has good contrast in woodland environments. But in some lighting conditions, I just tend to prefer green. Low light or twilight type lighting, I definitely prefer green. And any sort of open spaces, I tend to prefer green. It just sort of picks up on my eye better. That said, it's totally a personal preference thing. Anyway, moving on. The reticle with the chevron reticle is a BDC reticle, and I've heard debates out there as to what you actually want to zero it for in terms of what the original load is. Most folks will say that it's a M193 out of a 16-inch barrel is what the BDC is set for. I ran my numbers here that I got with my Freedom Munitions 55 grain 223 in a ballistic calculator, and you guys can see here on your screen how it actually lines up. Now, in most cases, it's going to be pretty darn close, and the point of aim, point of impact difference is actually going to be less than the thickness of the stadia lines on the reticle. So for most loads, it will be pretty close, but if you're shooting something heavier, like some 77 grain stuff or something like that, just run it in a ballistic calculator, and you guys can see where your holdovers are. So anyway, to explain the reticle for those who are not used to it, you're going to zero at the tip of the chevron, and then basically the top of the vertical stadia line is going to be the point of impact at 300 meters. Moving down, you have 400 meters, 500 meters, 600 meters, 700 meters, 800 meters. So what you'll see there is the width is going to be equivalent to 19 inches at that given distance. So basically, if you look at the middle target there where 500 meters is, you'll see that is a 19-inch wide target, which is based on the average person who's standing and looking at you or laying down in the prone. That's how you're going to range estimate them when you're trying to engage that target. You'll see that's where it lines up, and then you know that is 500 meters away. Now, if you move over to the right, you'll see the 600-meter target, and if that's where the lines lined up on your target that you're actually aiming at, then you know it's 600 meters away, and so on. So that is how it works. It's a pretty simple concept that once you get the hang of it and get it zeroed in, it is very effective out to basically 800 meters and beyond. When the battery-powered ACOGs were first announced, one of my reactions to it was going to be, would the electronics be rugged enough to sort of keep up with what ACOG has built their reputation on, which is just absolute rugged durability. And I've been a huge fan of ACOGs, as longtime viewers of the channel here know. The glass clarity is excellent, on par with just about anything out there, and also the ruggedness is excellent. ACOGs just work. They just plain work. There's always some sort of con to them, whatever people may say, but one thing they don't say is that they don't work. They always work, super rugged, super reliable, and the electronics was a potential weak source for that, right? So like I said, these have been out since 2012. I've not heard any issues with them. I've not had any issues with the electronic ones personally. So it seems that Trijicon, however they did it, made the electronic system just as durable as the actual optic itself. So that certainly is a good thing. Now, the optic, like all 4-power ACOGs, has the pros and cons like we talked about. It's a good weight, 18.1 ounces, I think, with the factory mount, which is nice for a 4-powered optic. The downside, of course, that people always say, like I said, is the eye relief on the 4-power ones anyway, and the price. People like to always say, the price is really high, and that's true. The price is not low. I picked this one up from Optic's Planet. I'll put a link down below for everybody to check out if you're looking to get one. And I think it's like $1,316 when I checked it today as to what it's listed for. Now, you do get the Mr. Guns and Gear channel discount, which is 5%. It'll be on the bottom of your screen here. So thank you to Optic's Planet for offering that to the viewers. But ACOGs aren't cheap. They'll probably never be cheap. But are they worth it? I guess it just depends what you think and what you want out of your optic. Now, a lot of people have a lot of faith in them based on their military service. I'm one of them, and if you want really good glass, really durable with a very usable BDC, ACOGs generally fit the bill for that. But there are the downsides that we talked about, of course. So with the LED model here, I think it minimizes one of the big ones, which is the reticle washout or not being bright enough type of issue. So like I said, if I was going to set it for HD, I'd put it right between 3 and 4, turn it on either way, and it's usable with a light and low light conditions, or even in daylight interior type conditions. Out in the field when it was really bright out, I set it between 4 and 5. I never saw a reason to ever put it on 6. That's just really, really bright, and you tend to get some sort of blooming on the reticle like you would even with like some of the fiber optic ones. So I've never seen a reason to go to 6. I'm not sure what kind of lighting condition you would ever be in that you would need it, but it's really bright. So in terms of being bright enough, you never have to worry about it with these ACOGs for sure. So another advantage is the 1-power setting being truly night vision compatible. So a lot of people in the past have said that the tritium in the ACOGs could damage your night vision. Now, with modern night vision, that's not really the case, but if you get some budget stuff, some of the older stuff out there, it certainly is possible, and that one setting does prevent that from happening. So there's a pro to that as well. So I think we hit pretty much most of the high points there. I'm a fan of it. I definitely like it. Down the road, I'm going to be doing a video on the basically 3 different types of 4-powered ACOGs and which one you should get. So if you're asking yourself that, should I get the tritium only, should I get the tritium fiber optic, or should I get the LED, stay tuned for that because we're going to go over all of them across the board. But that pretty much does it. If you guys have any questions, you can always post down below in the comment section. You can also post over at my Facebook page as always, which is the best way to get in touch with me because I do see most of those messages and questions, and here on YouTube these days, for whatever reason, I don't seem to see all of them. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet and you just found this video, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys in the next video.